Karen Rowland was sitting at her desk in her home office, completing a background check on a new client, when the phone rang. "Investigation, Rowland," says Karen Rowland. A female voice answered. It sounded young. "Hello, Miss Rowland. My neighbor, Mrs. Coppolini, told me your name. She said you were the detective who solved Miller's murder for the police. I have a strange situation, and Mrs. Coppolini thought it would be best to talk to you. First of all, could you tell me your name?" "Oh yes, sorry. I've never talked to a detective before, and I'm nervous. My name is Nadine French." "Okay, Miss French. What do you mean by weird situation?" "Actually, these are two situations. Could we meet in person sometime? This is quite personal, and I need to show you a couple of photos." Karen double-checked her calendar before answering. "I'm free today at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We can meet at a cafe around the corner. At this time, it is never crowded here and no one will disturb us. Will this time suit you?" "Yes, I'm free all day. Thank you." Karen gave Nadine the address and hung up. She returned to writing her report and thought no more about Miss French or her situations until 1:30, when the alarm clock rang. Karen entered the coffee shop 5 minutes early and noticed a young red-haired beauty sitting at a corner table. There was a look of anticipation on her pretty face. "Are you Nadine?" The young woman immediately stood up, holding out her hand. "Miss Rowland? Please call me Karen. Have you placed your order?" "Not yet." "Stay here and save this table." "What will you do?" As Karen approached the service counter, she noticed that Nadine was nervous. The young woman was dressed tastefully, probably from Nordstrom. Her hair was professionally cut, and there were no visible tattoos or piercings. Athletically slim and with modest makeup. The most striking feature was the dark red hair. Karen returned to the table with their coffee and began. "So, how can I help you?" Nadine could barely form words. In a voice barely above a whisper, she stuttered, "My hubby wants a divorce." Then there was silence. Karen reached across the table to take the young woman's hand. "Start from the very beginning. You said there were two situations." Nadine wiped her tears with a napkin and then began to tell a strange story. 6 months ago, I lost my job as a waitress when the restaurant where I worked closed due to the COVID-19 quarantine. I had only been out of work for a week when a headhunter called me and offered me a job that paid more than what I was making at the restaurant, including the hefty tips I usually received. Unfortunately, I would have to travel 3 days a week. I discussed this with my husband, and we both agreed that the money was good and the job would likely be temporary until this whole COVID thing passed. My job was to travel around the western states, mostly to upscale restaurants, but also to some chains, as well as mom and pops, to see how they were coping with the restrictions due to the crisis. I went into each restaurant once or twice, ordered food, assessed their protocols and service, then tried to interview management. I had a form that I filled out after each assessment and emailed to the office. Nadine fell silent, her eyes filling with tears and her shoulders shaking. I returned home on Wednesday evening after 2 days in Phoenix. My husband Peter was waiting for me. He handed me an envelope with a copy of the divorce papers and 3 photographs. He said I would officially receive them on Monday. Was it unexpected? Did you two have any problems? No. I mean, there was some tension with my travels. Peter used this time to concentrate on his work. He spent more time in Los Angeles, at his company's home office. But we spent the whole weekend together, and it seemed to me that everything was fine. Then this. So what happened? Did he tell you the reason? Nadine pulled the envelope out of her purse and looked around the cafe before pulling out 3 photographs from the envelope. 2 of the photographs showed a man and a woman having sex in what appeared to be a hotel room. The third was a photo of Nadine and the same man in front of a closed hotel room door, this time taken from the opposite side of the atrium. When Karen looked at each photo, the woman in the photo had bright red hair and an athletic build, but neither of the 2 photos in bed showed the woman's face. Nadine explained, "It's not me in bed with a man. I mean, it looks like me, but it's not me. It's me at the door. But this man has never been in my room." Karen looked at the photographs again. The first thing she noticed was that the two photographs could not have been taken without the knowledge of the lovers. This woman has a small tattoo of a bird on her shoulder. This is the worst, for me too. Parrot. Even this woman's earrings are identical to the ones Peter gave me last Christmas. My favorite pair to wear whenever I dress up, Karen had to ask. Isn't that you? No, Nadine raised her voice a little, then became embarrassed. Sorry, of course, you have every reason to doubt me. Even my husband didn't believe me when I denied it. What about that photo in the hallway? This is another strange thing. On Tuesday morning, I left my room to start my day. As I was closing the door, this man stopped me. He said I dropped something. There was an expensive pen on the floor. He picked it up and showed it to me, asking if it was mine. I said no, and he left with her. I didn't think twice about it until I saw this photo where it looks like we're leaving the room together. Karen had handled many divorce cases over the years that she owned a detective agency in New York, so she had to ask the following question. Is there a reason why your husband set you up and made it look like you committed adultery? I thought about it, but I don't think it's true. Peter was absolutely blown away when he shared the photos with me. He said the guy's wife sent him the photos. Nadine pulled out another note and showed it to Karen. It was printed text. Keep your slut wife away from my husband. Peter was practically in tears. He said he wanted to give me an unofficial copy of the divorce papers so I wouldn't be surprised, but most of all, he wanted to ask me why I cheated on him. The paperwork he gave me states that he is divorcing me due to irreconcilable differences, and he is only asking for a 50-50 division of our assets. We have no children, no home of our own. I don't see what he would achieve by setting me up. But someone went to great lengths to set you up. Look at the photo again. I know it's hard, but do you see anything that would confirm that you are not in this photo? Look carefully. Nadine forced herself to look at both photographs for a few minutes, then looked up. There's no mace on the bedside table. Mace? Yes. When I got this job and started traveling, Peter bought me a gas canister for protection and made me promise to always carry it with me, even made me promise to keep it next to my bed. I told him that this would force me to always check my bag when I fly. He said he didn't care, that if I didn't have this with me, he wouldn't be able to sleep when I was out of town. There is no spray can there. Well, it's a small thing, but sometimes the little things add up. Nothing else? No. You said on the phone that there were two strange situations. What's the second one? Nadine looked emotionally drained, but took a deep breath and continued. Well, I told you about my new job. I've been doing this for a little over 3 months and everything seems to be going well. Yesterday morning, I called the office to ask for next week off. I didn't think I would be able to function normally after the end of my marriage. Ms. Sims, the woman who works in the office, did not answer the phone and did not call me back. Around 11 in the morning, I came to the office and it was closed. I asked the manager to let me in, and when he did, the room was empty. No Miss Sims, no her table, no chairs, nothing. Why did you ask the manager to let you in? Didn't you have the key? No, I was in the office only 3 times. First, when I filled out job applications, and a couple of times since then. Everything I did was done through email and phone calls. I know it sounds strange, but nothing I did was illegal or unethical. My salary came into my account via direct deposit every 2 weeks. Ms. Sims emailed my assignments 2 weeks in advance with my travel information. After each trip, I sent my report and expenses. My payments were never questioned. I was told that the information collected would be used to develop a database of best practices that the company would sell to restaurant consultants for future pandemics. What is the name of this company? Consulting in the Service Sector, SIC. Here are the cards they gave me. Nadine handed one of her cards to Karen. What phone number is this? Every time someone called this number, Ms. Sims answered or returned a message within an hour or two. I didn't question it either. I thought that since Ms. Sims was the only person in the office, it made sense that she didn't always answer. Ms. Sims told me that the Portland office was new and more employees would be moving there next year. Have you received any emails from them since yesterday? Nothing, and there are no replies to my emails. Karen spent half a minute making notes before asking another question. Was the bounty hunter the one you contacted? No, I didn't even consider the candidacy of a headhunter. They said they got my name from one of my previous managers, but they didn't say from whom. You said they. Was it a man or a woman? I cannot tell. And the name? The person I spoke with identified herself as Erin Smith. I was never given the name of the company. Erin Smith said the hiring company paid all expenses. I was so excited that I never applied for it. And your only contact at SIC was this Sims. Yes, Dory Sims, I think she's English, maybe Australian. She has an accent. And every week you went out of town, visited several restaurants, did your reports, received your salary, and that was all. Nothing unusual on the road or at home until Wednesday, when your husband gave you the photos, and yesterday when you found the office empty. I've been racking my brain since yesterday and can't come up with anything. I feel so stupid. I never investigate. I never ask any questions. Don't blame yourself too much. Like you said, you didn't do anything illegal or unethical. You needed money, and they paid you. The old saying goes, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Your husband obviously thought everything was fine, otherwise he would have raised the alarm. It still hurts me to be such a fool. Will you figure it out? It will cost you money. I don't work for free. The money that Peter and I saved to buy our first house is in our account. I'd rather spend my half trying to get to the bottom of this than spend the rest of my life guessing. Karen pulled the contract out of her folder. The two of them discussed the terms and what to expect before Nadine signed. As they stood up to leave, Karen thought of one more thing. Your husband said that you can count on being served on Monday. Is there somewhere you can stay to avoid this? I have a friend in Vancouver. She could shelter me for a while. Why did you ask? I don't want this to get to the legal stage until we know more. We don't know why you were framed or by whom. I would like to have these questions answered before we talk to Peter so that we can talk to him more easily if you haven't been served. Just hearing the words, talk to Peter, made Nadine's face light up. Is there hope for their marriage? Thank you, Karen. Karen watched the young woman walk out the door and down the street, hoping she hadn't gone too far when she'd thrown Nadine that lifeline. Karen's phone was put on silent mode during the meeting. When she checked it, she saw one missed call from her husband, Bill, and one voicemail. Hi, baby. Today I worked until late evening again. I hope this is the last time. We're going to place an order here. I'll call you if I'm late after 9. Love you. The last 3 weeks have been absolute hell. Bill took on this position as CFO just over a year ago, and this was the first year that he was fully responsible for preparing the year-end reports. Bill boasted about the amazing team of accountants working in his department, but even with these 4 smart guys, Bill felt the weight of it all. It had been 3 weeks of late nights and long weekends, but it was all supposed to end this weekend. The report will go to his board next Wednesday. Karen poured a glass of wine before returning to her home office and turning on her laptop. Anthony was on a date, and Bill was at work. They might as well have gotten to work. She quickly Googled service consultants and found nothing. She searched the websites of each state's secretaries of state for a registered company with that name, empty. A LinkedIn search for Dory Sims, Erin Smith, and Aaron Smith returned the same negative results. Everywhere Karen turned, she ran into a brick wall. Everywhere until she started looking for Peter French. In response, she received a short biography of a promising young specialist who was the second person in charge of development at Hippolyte. It was already 8 o'clock and she was still standing at the terminal when her phone beeped with an incoming message. Ready! I'll be home in 20 minutes. Pour me some ale, please. 20 minutes later, Bill walked into the house, casually kissed and hugged Karine tightly, then took 2 sips of the Bridgeport IPA Karine poured for him. Remind me why I took this job? Because you like it. At least you loved it the other 50 weeks of the year. Are you really done with the report? Yes. Daniel and Larry are doing the collating and binding tomorrow, but everything is already done. I don't want to hear an accounting term until Monday morning. Bill looked into Karen's office, saw a glowing display, and all the notes scattered on her desk. "What are you working on so late?" "Sit down." "Damn it, Bill, you've already finished your ale. Give me your glass." Karen went to the kitchen, poured Bill a second glass of ale and another glass of wine for herself. Then she told Bill about the strange case of Nadine French. Bill listened to the first half before interrupting. "I thought you were done with cases of adultery." "You should have seen her, Bill." Bill smiled. It was so similar to his wife. Hard as nails on the outside and soft as pudding on the inside. Always ready to help someone with a problem. Besides, wait until you hear the rest of this girl's story. Bill was attentive as always. Karine could count on Bill's help. He had a keen, analytical mind and read at least 2 detective novels a month. Bill looked at the photographs and immediately jumped out of his chair and headed into the office. He returned with a thick volume. Karen watched him read out the table of contents, then handed the book to her. "Full Sherlock Holmes?" Bill smiled. "Read this story." For the next half hour, Karen read the story. When she finished, she looked up and saw Bill smiling at her. When I saw the photograph of the woman's red hair, it awakened my memory. There's not much new under the sun when it comes to these things. In fact, or in fiction, all of this has been done before. So someone devised this elaborate scheme to get Nadine French out of the way? Who would do it? Who benefits from this? To my husband? Judging by what Nadine said, no. She told me that her husband was crushed. He takes his half and moves to Los Angeles. His company offered him a promotion at head office. Someone thought it was worth spending time and significant money to separate them. This should have been the goal. As in history, the work was not finished until the desired effect was achieved. In this case, when Mr. French told his wife that they were done. This gave Karen an idea. She spent 10 minutes online, then picked up the phone and called Nadine. "Nadine, I'm sorry I'm calling so late, but it's important. I want you to go online and search for pictures of actresses that you will see on the website. I'll email you the link as we speak. Take your time and let me know if you see anyone you know. Call me first thing in the morning, whether you find anything or not." Bill watched and listened as Karen's phone conversation ended. "That's all I did with my wife's body tonight. Can I get you anything?" "Sorry, baby. Drink this wine and get me a Diet Coke, okay? I need to get a couple things done before I go to bed." "You're lovely. Thanks for pointing me in the direction." Even before Bill walked through the door, Karen was looking for information on the Phoenix Actors Union website. Bill went to bed. He had seen Karen so nervous before and knew she had a long night ahead of her. Karen was still busy with this when Anthony returned home from his date. It was already past midnight. They spent a few minutes chatting. Anthony even asked if his mom needed help. She said no, and he left her at the monitor. By 2 o'clock, she had found what she was looking for. She booked a plane ticket to Phoenix for Monday, turned everything off, and went to bed. Bill rolled over and kissed her goodnight. The phone rang at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. Karine barely had time to say a quiet hello before she was interrupted by Nadine. "Tori Brown? What? Dory Sims is Tori Brown. I found her photo on the website of the Actors Union. You asked me to check. She's listed right there as available for plays, films, television. I didn't sleep last night until I found her picture, but I waited until this morning to call you. Hope it's not too early. Sorry. Do not apologize. This is great news. I also found our mystery man. He's an actor in Phoenix. I'll fly there on Monday to talk to Mr. Jason Holland." "What's happening? Why is this happening?" "I'm still figuring it all out, Nadine. Be patient. In the meantime, could you give me your husband's contact information?" Nadine gave Karine Peter's phone number and where he worked. She didn't know where he had been living for the last 4 days. "One more thing, and this is important. Don't hide anything from me. If you do this and I find out, I'll quit. I'm sorry if I offended you, but are there any men or women in your life, for that matter, who would like to ruin your marriage? That your marriage is the only reason for not being in a relationship with them?" Nadine didn't understand the question. I don't understand what you mean. I want you to think, Nadine. Is there anyone waiting around the corner? Someone who thinks they have a chance to pick up the pieces if you and Peter get divorced? The question made Nadine pause. The pause is long enough for Karen to get the impression that she may have struck a nerve. She didn't realize how much her question shocked the young woman, who wondered to herself, "Do I know anyone so evil?" Finally, Nadine answered, "No, I honestly can't imagine anyone who could do this." Karen felt relieved, but also disappointed. The secret would have been solved if Nadine had blurted out the name. "That's good, Nadine. Sorry if I upset you." On Monday morning, Karen stood in the TSA line, waiting to be subjected to yet another humiliation. As a former NYPD counterterrorism officer, she understood the need for security, but nearly 2 decades have passed since 9/11 and authorities still haven't figured out a better way to screen passengers. How many times has she watched an agent search some embarrassed little old lady who forgot to put her lipstick on the conveyor belt? By the time the plane landed and Karen left the Phoenix airport to hail a taxi, her contact in Arizona had left a message where she could find Jason Holland. He worked as a waiter at the local Olive Garden. Karen made sure the hostess seated her at one of Jason's tables. It was late lunchtime, and the crowds were getting smaller. Holland walked up to Karen's table, flashing his big welcome smile. "Good afternoon!" That's all that came out of his lips when he saw a photo of himself, in which he was naked in bed with a redhead lying on the table. "What the—" "Hello, Jason. I'll order the signature soup and salad for lunch, a Diet Coke, and a chance to talk to you as early as possible. I mean as soon as possible, when it's convenient for you. Could you please put this away before anyone sees?" "Why, Jason? Are you ashamed of this? The lady who should be in bed with you, a lady whose husband is divorcing her because of this photo, is thinking about posting it on the internet. Her life is already ruined. Why shouldn't yours be destroyed? I finish at 2. Can we meet across the street at a cafe and discuss this? I'll have lunch and wait for you there. Don't disappoint me by not showing up. You'll make me very angry. And that's not good." Karen said the last phrase with enough threat in her voice that Jason got the distinct impression that the woman was not joking. Karen enjoyed her lunch and crossed the street. At 2-3 minutes, Jason sat at an outdoor table across from Karen. Karen didn't waste a minute. "Tell me about the photographs." "I can't. I was paid $4,000 and signed a non-disclosure agreement." "This is very bad. You are between a rock and a hard place. You'll have to decide who you want to piss off, the person who paid you to pose for these photos, or my client. She is ready to publish these photos publicly and sue you for $100,000 for continuing the fraud. Her husband is divorcing her based on these photographs. $100,000? I don't have $100,000. With 10 years of experience as a police officer interrogating suspects, Karen had an innate sense of when to play good cop and when to play bad cop. Tell that to the judge, asshole. Or, tell me what happened and who paid you. Otherwise, be prepared for your life to go in circles in the toilet." Jason Holland folded up like a cheap wet wipe. "I was contacted through my agent. I met a man who offered me $4,000 to pose for simulated sex photos. I was told that they would be used for personal purposes. They would never be seen in public, and were given a contract to sign, which included his guarantee to me and my non-disclosure agreement. I met this man next week at the hotel. There was a woman there, and we posed in bed, simulating sex. The guy stood next to the bed and took several dozen pictures. The next morning, I waited for a woman who looked like her to come out of her hotel room. I was told to take the handle that was in front of the door, ask the woman if it was hers, and then leave. The same guy was right across the atrium, in the room he'd been in the night before, taking pictures of the meeting. Have you ever seen a woman at the door before? No. Where is your copy of the contract? In my apartment, locked to my desk. Describe the man. A big guy, about 190 centimeters tall, in his early 30s, mixed race, bald. Reminds me a bit of Vin Diesel. What about your bed partner? Sweet face, brown eyes, red hair, which I think was a wig, nice figure. Have you ever seen her before? At any of your acting gigs? Never. I would remember this face. Have you ever wondered why you were hired for this? It was $4,000. Truth be told, I assumed it was some guy who needed proof that his old lady was cheating, and I just provided the proof. Another bastard, Karen thought, but did not say it out loud. Let's take a taxi to your apartment. I need a copy of this contract. Jason didn't argue. An hour later, Karen returned to the center. In her briefcase was a copy of the contract and a statement signed by Jason Holland saying that the woman in the sexy photos was not the woman at the hotel room door. The earliest flight with a seat available back to Portland didn't leave until 9:30. Karen sat at an outdoor table in a street cafe, sipping a glass of wine and enjoying the dry heat. The weather was so different from Portland spring. She would need to see if Bill could take a few days off so they could come here for the long weekend. Karen spent the next 2 hours arranging a meeting with Peter French for Wednesday. She left a message with Tori Brown's agent suggesting that she might have an acting job for her and asked Tori to call her. The most difficult call was to her client. Karine did not tell Nadine all the details of today's meeting with Jason Holland. If Bill's theory that the purpose of the ruse was to separate the couple was to be believed, and given that it was the man who carried out the ambush in Arizona, then it made sense that the object of that man's attention was Nadine. Karen had already asked Nadine if she thought that might be the case, and Nadine denied it. Was she lying, or was she naive? Or perhaps the theory was wrong. Karen was disappointed when she ended her conversation with Nadine. Nadine denied knowing one Howard Stone, the name on the contract, and his physical description said nothing. Karen spent another hour on her smartphone trying to track down one Mr. Howard Stone. She found several references to people with that name, but none of them matched the description of the mysterious man. One nice piece of luck. Tori Brown called her back and made an appointment for the next day in the afternoon. It was just after 1 a.m. when Karen collapsed into her bed. On Tuesday afternoon, Karen met with Tori Brown in her agent's conference room. Karen and Tori were alone. The agent poked his head through the door just to tell them he was free to sign the contract. Karen decided to use the same direct approach that had worked so effectively with Holland. Miss Brown, or should I say, Miss Dory Smith, tell me about your work at SIC. Tori's face paled at these words. Hey, what is this? I was told that we are here to discuss a role in the film. I lied, just like you lied to Nadine French. Ms. French is ready to sue you for your role in destroying her marriage. You will receive the documents by the end of the week. We are suing you for $200,000 for your participation in the fraud. Tori's face paled even more at the sight of the number. I can't talk to you. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. This contract will not protect you from legal damages. You have 5 minutes before I walk out the door and call Ms. French's lawyer. Tori's acting skills could always be relied upon to get her out of trouble. She began to cry. Her lips trembled. She leaned over, covering her face with her hands, and her voice trembled. Sorry, I needed money after I was fired from my job. I was almost homeless. The money I received barely saved me from losing my apartment. Tori looked up, surprised to see the expression of hard indifference on Karen Rowland's face. Who is this woman? Thought Tori. Tears always helped. I was an NYPD officer for over 10 years. Do you have any idea how many actors and actresses I stopped for various reasons while working as a patrolman? I must admit, you are very good. I once stopped one of the Kardashians, and your act surpassed her talents. I think it's the trembling lips. This is what sets you apart from others. Now you have 2 minutes before I leave. Tori hunched over, and real tears began to flow. Let's start with something simple. Describe the man who contacted you. Tori looked up. It wasn't a man. It was a woman. Corinne tried her best not to show surprise when she learned that another party was involved in the case. A woman. Describe the woman. About this time, Agent Tori poked his head through the door again. Is everything all right here? Need coffee or anything else? Karen smiled at the agent. No, we're fine. Thank you. Tori's head was turned away from the door, and the agent did not linger to see his client's tears. Continue, you said? About 35 years old, I would guess. Brunette with shoulder-length hair, expensive cut to match her hair color. She wore expensive clothes. Attractive woman, 170 centimeters tall, wearing low heels, medium build. White, black, or white, a little tanned. She either lives in the South or was on vacation in the South. What name did she say? Helen Rhodes. The resume with your advertising photo indicates that you have an accent. Miss French thought you were English or Australian. You also voiced bounty hunter Aaron Smith? Yes. It was supposed to be a garbled voice to add to the confusion. Well, it worked. I spent hours searching for a recruiter with a male or female version of Aaron. Like any actor, Tori smiled slightly when she heard Karen's compliment. How much were you paid and what were you told to do? On the first day, I met Nadine French in the office to ask her to sign some paperwork and arrange how she would be paid directly into her bank account. I returned to this office only 2 more times when I expected Nadine to come in. Everything she sent was online or via email. On the rare occasions that she called, or if the restaurant called to confirm Nadine's credentials, I answered the number Rhodes provided. I would answer in my real English accent. Did Helen Rhodes sign a non-disclosure agreement? Yes. Have you ever met a large man, about 190 centimeters tall, bald, mixed race? No, just Rhodes. Can you tell me what it all meant? Rhodes stopped by my house Wednesday night and told me the job was done. I took my phone and keys to the office. She handed me $2,000 in cash and reminded me of the non-disclosure agreement. That's the last thing she said to me. How much did she pay you in total? $4,500. Karen told Tori that the whole scam seemed to be set up to get Nadine out of town so she could eventually be photographed in bed with another man. That the photos were fake, but good enough that Nadine's husband planned to divorce Nadine. Damn, this is bad. I'll tell you what. If you promise not to tell anyone where you got it, how would you feel about Helen Rhodes's photograph? Do you have a photograph? Yes. It was also strange that my roommate was sitting in a cafe across the street when I met Rhodes for the second time. She was able to take a photo with her phone. It's not great, but it's better than nothing. I have this on my phone. Tori showed her the photo. Can you forward it to me? 10 minutes later, Karen was leaving the agent's office with a blurry photo of Helen Rhodes that Tori's roommate had taken from afar. She had one more piece of the puzzle, but she still didn't know where the pieces fit. Karen called Peter French. Mr. French, I know you agreed to meet with me tomorrow, but I think you might want to meet today, given the information I would like to share with you. Peter agreed to meet Karen at the pub around the corner from the extended stay hotel where he was staying. Lived since he left the apartment he once shared with Nadine. Peter French was sitting at a table at the back of the bar, drinking a mug of dark ale. Karen stopped the bartender and asked her to bring a glass of Merlot into the booth. Peter stood up as Karen approached the booth with her hand outstretched. When they shook hands, Karen was surprised by Peter's physique. Nadine told her that Peter was a computer programmer, and the man standing in front of her had the body of a football player and the face of a movie star. Having finished with the introductions, Peter immediately got down to business. You said on the phone that my wife hired you, and you have evidence that she was not the person in the photographs. This is the only reason I agreed to meet with you. My lawyer told me she was not home and was not served. Depending on what you tell me, if it doesn't prove Nadine's innocence, are you willing to tell me where she is? Yes, but it won't come to that. I'll get straight to the point. Here is the statement signed by the man in the photographs. His name is Jason Holland. Mr. Holland is an actor, and he was hired to pose with a woman who was supposed to fool you into thinking it was your wife in bed with him. Peter interrupted her. This is terribly difficult to believe. Karen waited for the barmaid to bring her wine, and Peter waved her off when she pointed at his half-empty pint. When the barmaid left, Karen pulled out the photographs. Look carefully at the photographs. Notice how these two don't show Nadine's face. Also, pay attention to the angle of the photo. Do you think someone could have made them without Nadine knowing there was a third person in the room with a camera? Now look at this last photo, the one by the door. There is no intimacy between this man and Nadine. This photo was taken from the other end of the atrium. Holland just picked up the handle that was left outside your wife's door. Holland asks your wife if this is her pen, and the photographer takes a photo, and Nadine will never see this person again until you give her these photos. Peter continued to flip through the 3 photographs, trying to digest everything Karen had told him. I have a statement signed by Jason Holland confirming what I just told you. And one more thing. Nadine's job was a ploy to get her out of town on a regular basis. Someone or persons wanted her to leave town until you decided to divorce her based on these photos. Last Thursday, Nadine showed up at the SIC office and it was empty. Her contact at SIC, Dory Sims, is actually Tori Brown, also an actress who is paid to pretend that SIC is a real company. Who could do this? Maybe you can tell me. Nadine can't explain it. I admit, I thought it was someone who wanted to pursue Nadine after you divorced her, but I have my doubts. Do you know this woman? Karen showed Peter a fuzzy photo on her phone. Peter looked at the photo without saying a word, then leaned back, staring into space. Damn it, I'm such an idiot! How could I be so damn stupid? The expression on Peter's face would be funny if the situation weren't so serious. Karen waited patiently for Peter's explanation. This is my boss, Greta Hesse, founder and CEO of AITA. It's crazy, but now it makes some sense. She gave little hints about how traveling spouses might be tempted on the road, how even the strongest marriages rarely survive suspicion, if not outright infidelity. I called Greta on Tuesday evening and told her that I needed some rest, that she was right and Nadine cheated on me, that it's all over between us. Greta offered to pay for my move to the headquarters in Los Angeles. I always thought her flirting was a little over the top, almost harassing, but she knew I was devoted to my wife. So she started all this because she had a crush on you? Yes. Incredible, isn't it? A little over a year ago, at a company holiday party, Greta got a little drunk. This was completely out of character. She said a few words to me about Nadine not being on my level. That little waitress, as she put it. I ignored the comments, and 2 weeks later, when I arrived at the head office, Greta apologized. I told Greta that if anyone was out of sorts, it was me, that I am happy in my marriage. Wait, do you know a man about 190 centimeters mixed race, similar to Vin Diesel? Looks like Andre Hillman, Greta's personal bodyguard. He's a photographer. He hired Holland in Phoenix and took the photographs. The two of them sat in silence for a minute, drinking and thinking. How did your boss know about the parrot tattoo and special earrings? Probably from a holiday party. There was a photographer there. Nadine was wearing a backless dress and did not cover her tattoo. She probably wore these earrings to the party. They are her favorite when we go out. Peter looked deeply into Karen's eyes. I really screwed up. Do you think Nadine will ever forgive me? Why don't you call her and find out? Even Nadine said she would have thought it was her in bed with the guy if she didn't know better. They thought of everything. Hairstyle, tattoo, earrings. Your boss played on the inevitable problems when spouses travel. You've both been played by someone willing to do and spend anything to make you suspicious. Peter and Karen spent another half hour discussing what he would do about betraying his boss and came up with a plan. Peter dialed Greta's personal number. The call could not be used in any legal proceedings, but it would confirm Greta's involvement. Greta was pleased to see Peter's number appear on her phone's display. Hello, Peter. Greta, it's slowly dawning on me, but I just realized it. You were the one behind Nadine's work, sending her out of town, giving her the opportunity to cheat on me until she finally ended up in bed with another man. Greta couldn't believe her luck. Peter still thought it was Nadine in the photos, but she wasn't ready to admit her part in the conspiracy. Peter, I don't understand what you're talking about. Please, Greta. If we're going to have any kind of future, you have to tell me the truth. We can't start a relationship if we start it with a lie. Tell me why you did it. Because you're a big idiot. I'm madly in love with you. How could you not know this? But of course, because you are a typical ignorant man when it comes to love. That's why you didn't know your wife was cheating until I showed you the proof. Now come here where you belong. Peter had heard enough and needed to end the conversation before he lost control. Imagine this woman calling his wife a cheater. It will take me some time to sort everything out. Be patient for a few weeks. Fine. I'll wait, Peter, but not for long. I've already waited too long. I love you. Peter hung up. My God, this woman is delusional. Now call Nadine. Karen got up to leave. I'll take care of the rest. As we agreed, you will take care of Nadine. She stopped to pay the barmaid for her drinks and couldn't help but overhear Peter. Hi, baby. I'm sorry. So sorry that you can't even imagine. Can I go home? I miss you and love you. Karen headed to her car thinking that sometimes this job wasn't so bad. She booked a plane ticket to Los Angeles through an app on her phone. Karen walked through the door to find Bill and Anthony in the kitchen preparing dinner together. Karen kissed Anthony on the cheek and Bill on the lips. Bill put his arm around Karen's waist and squeezed possessively. Karen looked Bill in the eyes. Have I ever told you how much I love you? About 10,000 times or more. Why did you ask? What have I done now? Is supper ready? I can tell you while we eat. I'll go take a shower. Wine? We're having spaghetti today. Yes, please. I'll be right back. Over dinner, Karen told Bill and Anthony about this crazy case and how Bill's mention of Sherlock Holmes helped point her in the right direction, despite some detours. Both Bill and Anthony were fascinated. After dinner, Karen called Nadine. Nadine couldn't stop thanking Karen for all her help. She and Peter were already home and making peace. I can't get him to stop apologizing. Karen told Nadine what Peter and Karen had agreed to in the pub. Whatever Peter decided, Nadine was fine with it, although part of her wanted Greta Hesse to suffer at least for a while. But I know that this will simply prevent us from getting our lives together. Peter turned down a job with a company in Seattle that tried to hire him. He's going to take this job now and will move up north. I think it's for the best, Nadine. But it's your decision. I'll call you and Peter after my meeting with Miss Hesse. Nadine thanked her, wished her good luck, and went back to letting Peter make amends. Karen took a taxi from Los Angeles to Hippolyta's headquarters. The elevator took her to the executive floor, where Karen was stopped by the secretary. Karen handed the young lady an envelope marked "Private and Confidential" and said that Miss Hesse would be very interested in seeing the contents of the envelope. The receptionist handed the envelope to Ms. Hesse's assistant, who answered the phone. The office door next to Hesse's opened, and a large, dark-haired, bald man took an envelope from the executive assistant before returning to his office. Karen was sitting on a chair in the waiting room. 10 minutes later, Andre Hillman came out and asked Karen to follow him to Greta Hesse's office. Greta stood up, but did not extend her hand to Karen. She asked Karini to sit down, and Andre sat next to her. How can I help you, Miss Rowling? I represent Mr. and Mrs. French here. They would like to settle this issue privately, out of court, although they are willing to address this issue publicly if you prefer. This is chantage? No, I think you will find that they are willing to be more than reasonable. More reasonable than I would have been under the same circumstances. What are they asking? They demand that you pay my fee, $16,000, plus attorney Peter French's fees for filing the divorce papers, that's $1,200. Peter French asks you to fire him from Hippolyta and provide him with a standard severance package and a good reference. He also asks for the return of the $900 he spent on a hotel room after he left his wife. What else? That you will personally apologize to both of them, and that after that, you will leave them alone. I ask that you do not prosecute Jason Holland or Tory Brown for violating the terms of their NDA. I didn't give either of them a choice. It would be in everyone's interests if this whole sad story were brought to an end. Any prosecution of these people would only increase the likelihood that Hippolyta's board or investors would get wind of this. I don't understand. Why do they let me go so easily? They continue to live their lives together. Peter is looking for other opportunities, as businessmen like to say. And most of all, they feel sorry for you. These words hit Greta harder than a ball to the chin. It took Greta half a minute to come to her senses. Her voice barely recovered. Andre, could you allow me to talk to Miss Rowland alone? Thank you. Karen waited until the door closed behind Andre. It was a disgusting act on your part to try to destroy a happy couple. If I could destroy it, it wouldn't be as bad as they thought, would it? I don't think that's fair. You've pulled some terribly dirty tricks. Did Shakespeare write, "Everything is fair"? I see the ring on your finger, Miss Rowland. You have someone to come home to, someone to share your bed with at night and cuddle next to. Karen didn't answer, so Greta continued. Over the past 7 years, I have had relationships with 3 men. 2 were rich, like me. Masters of the universe, as Tom Wolfe put it. Both treated our relationship as if it were a merger. Romance was less important than the connection of 2 entities. The third was a fraudulent gold digger who almost led me to the altar. Then I met Peter French, a wonderful man, handsome, balanced, smart, all the qualities of a right guy. Best of all, he was completely faithful to his vows, even when I was flirting. I've been working hard on Peter for the past 3 months, trying to undermine his faith in Nadine's loyalty. I flew to Portland last weekend after he told me about the photos and the divorce. I tried to persuade him to come back to my hotel room. He said he was still married and would remain married until the divorce was finalized. Can you believe it? I have a house of 1,000 square meters on the beach in Malibu, townhomes in Vail and Kauai. I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and I can't compete with a waitress from Portland. Karen almost felt sorry for this woman. Almost. It was still a shitty thing to do, ruining a happy marriage. Yes, it was so, but I don't care. You probably have a child or 2. I bet they're great kids. In a few years, I won't be able to give birth. Of course, I could have children myself, but damn it. I want my husband to be the father of my children. I want to look out the back window and watch my kids play catch with their dad. Karen didn't know how to react to this. She had a husband who loved her and their 2 children. So she just let Greta talk. Instead, Greta changed the subject. Tell me, please. I spent months setting it all up, analyzing and fixing every flaw in the plan. How did you figure this out in less than a week? Karen considered leaving the woman hanging, but thought, what the hell? And told her. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote a short story back in the 19th century, The League of Redheads, a detective story about Sherlock Holmes. When my husband saw Mrs. French's photo, it reminded him of a story in which a clerk creates a fictitious business to get a store owner out of the way while an accomplice digs a tunnel from under the store to a bank vault next door. Greta shook her head. Sherlock Holmes was all she said. Greta opened her desk drawer and took out her checkbook. I agree with all the conditions. Who should I write your check to? She wrote a check. And the lawyer? Greta wrote out a second check, made out to the name Karen gave her. Greta wrote a third check. You said that I owe Peter $900 for a hotel room? Karen nodded. Here, give them this. I'll fly to Portland later this week and apologize in person. But for now, you can tell them I'm sorry. Greta wrote a check to Peter and Nadine French for $900,000. Karen looked at the check in amazement. Are you sure? There are 3 extra zeros here. I won't attach any importance to this. I grew up poor, so I know it's a lot. But I could order 100 of them and I'd still have enough to live in obscene luxury. You know, Peter just confirmed why he was the only one. He has more honesty than any man I've ever known. Greta's eyes moistened. It's time to leave. Karen turned to Greta before leaving the office. A couple of years ago, I couldn't stand it anymore. Certain aspects of the job drove me crazy. I quit my job to get my thoughts in order. It was the best I could do. You didn't ask me for advice, but I'll give it to you anyway. Take a little vacation and get your personal life in order. Take an extended sabbatical. You don't need money, and these were the actions of a desperate person. It is the nature of all AA personalities to want everything. Greta hated receiving advice. She couldn't help but respond as if she had been stung. It's easy for you to say, as it is easy for anyone who has everything? Karen laughed. Well, I would like my leg back. And walked out the door. Greta stood at her desk, thinking, what strange things I say. She sat down and Googled Karen Rowland and came across several newspaper clippings. She read a July 3, 2007 New York Times article detailing a police raid on a suspected terrorist cell. One of the officers, a detective named Karen Rowland, was in critical condition after being shot in the legs by a shotgun. A subsequent article confirmed that Detective Rowland was recovering, but had lost her right leg below the knee. Surgeons managed to save her left leg, although it was seriously damaged. I'll be damned, Greta said it out loud. She headed towards the door. Leslie, she said to her administrator, could you please schedule a board meeting as soon as possible? Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.